we've got Bud in the room here, Bud Parr. So Bud is speaking from New York today, and I first met Bud on the Jekyll forums, where he continues to answer questions and support new Jekyll developers. He's been really active in that community. So Bud runs Sonnet Media, and today he's talking about real-world content strategy with Jekyll. Over to you, Bud.
Thank you. Are you there? I see you on the other screen. I'm going to get started. Let me just share my screen very quickly. And wow. Okay, so the name of my talk today is Real-World Content Strategy with Jekyll. My name is Bud Parr, as Mike said. I've been working on the web for 15 years, and since 2013, I've been doing a lot of my work in Jekyll and with static tech in general. I think so far I've built 25 or 30 websites in Jekyll. In 2014, I started a site and now a meetup group here in New York City called Static is the New Dynamic. The aim of the project is to help more developers and designers to bring or consider bringing static technology into their workflow. On the site, we've got articles, tutorials, presentations collected from around the web. I post about events like this one, some of my own original articles, showcases of interesting use cases for static sites, and an opinionated list, not definitive, but opinionated list of tools and resources like hosting and deployment solutions, commerce solutions, cheat sheets, editing tools, etc. So as soon as I've got some time, I'm going to add a job board onto the site as well. So if you want to contribute or be listed on that, get in touch. So since I began building static websites, I've wanted to push towards expanding static use cases beyond just blogs for hackers. I've always felt that any site could benefit from being faster, more secure, and really efficient to build, so why isn't every site static? When I first wrote about static sites a few years ago, I wrote how I love the simplicity of a markdown document. I like the simple logic of having a discrete item of content expressed entirely in one document with all its metadata right there. How that's far more human, if you will, than having the same item spread around, so many database tables. But then again, is that too simple? The problem for me has been twofold. One, a lot of my work has fairly complex sets of content, and two, my work is primarily for clients, where at the end of the day, a non-technical person is going to be left to manage most of the site's content. So they're not going to be just cloning a repo and pushing commits written in a text editor. They don't even know what that is, and likely, since web backends have become the standard, they don't want to know. So, from the earliest days, I've been encouraged by the successes of Dave Cole and the team at Development Seed, who built the very elaborate website for healthcare.gov in Jekyll. And lately, the team, some of whom I've come to know at 18F, who've been doing a lot to bring, really robust static sites into the U.S. government, as well as to contribute to open source software that we've been using. So, I've embraced the constraints of using static sites, and I've become a better developer because of it. Much of my focus in my work now is on content and design, rather than server admin and software updates, which I've grown to loathe over the years. I've come to realize that simplicity is part of the point, and actually pretty smart. A goal to seek for my work rather than a limitation. Indeed, certainly not a limitation. So at the same time, we've seen Jekyll become a far more capable tool in the last couple of years. First, we had collections introduced in 2014, and that released Jekyll from being, just a blogging framework. And then build time improvements in 3.0. Now we're getting gem-based themes, more capable filters, and importantly, a growing ecosystem. We've seen this rise of editors, among others, in the ecosystem that kind of reduce the compromises that we have to make to enjoy the benefits of static sites. So let's talk about content strategy. Forgive my pillars there for a second, but this is how I think about it. I focus on people, not technology. So these are the 4 pillars, and if we make life easy for people in these groups, then everybody wins. For our audience, we want to bring together content seamlessly so that they don't have to work to get at it, no matter what type of screen they may be viewing it with. The old way of thinking of content as one page, one URL doesn't work any longer, because we have to be much more flexible with a page than just dumping everything in a text box. So this page that you're looking at pulls data, and this is 2 different views of the same page, pulls data from 5 different blocks of content, and many more manifestations of that as we go down the page. It would be next to impossible to maintain that if that were plumped down into a single text box. A traditional CMS, what's more, is that it would start to choke under the queries of pulling all of that content on one page. But with Jekyll, we shift the pain of this complexity to build time, not when users want to view the site. We also have to bring relevant content together where it matters and leave it out or rearrange it where necessary based on when and where our audience is coming from. So this comes from the principle of create once, publish everywhere. So here are 2 different versions of that same screen we just looked at, one for an iPad and one for a phone. And you can see that the content starts to shift. So it's also important to remember that content creators are people too. They're our users. If the people entering the content can't make sense of it, we'll have little luck with our end users. So don't make them have to figure out too much. We can't leave them wondering where to put things. We need to create an understandable structure where they create a piece of content once and don't have to repeat themselves. And it's important to reduce the opportunity for errors and to make all of our content work for us. That said, logical on the back end may look very little like the way our content is displayed on the front end. So here on that same page again, there's a list of all the content that we're pulling from the page. And you can see it's a pretty long list in a lot of different sections. Our content set needs to be situated in the largest possible buckets based on how the content is shaped. That is to say, the contributor, for instance, as a content group, as long as each object within it shares similar fields like bio, image, name, etc., they might be better blocking them together than to have separate blocks for editors or contributors or anything like that. So when those defining attributes can be assigned as metadata instead of high-level buckets. So again, we started with a large bucket of content. Now we want, while our content buckets to be as encompassing as possible, we want to break our objects within them down into the smallest bits that make sense. By keeping our constraints at a low level, that is in metadata instead of content buckets, we don't assume too much, and doing so helps us keep our content dry, so we're not repeating ourselves. We use that metadata to bind objects together, using them wherever may be appropriate. So here's a book showing its author or authors. And here's a review related to the same author, and perhaps a book too. And here's an article related to that, and another author. So next up is how we think about this for our dev team. We have to think about it from their perspective as well. So one thing that Jekyll does really well is to allow us to experiment with our content structure. You can imagine what I was just going through, that things can get complex fairly quickly. all that neat logic you come up with in your early content diagrams and spreadsheets breaks down as it gets closer to being real, and stakeholders get to see it, and editors get to use it. Before I began working with static site generators, I typically use one of several large content management systems for my projects, each with its own way of dictating the structure of my content. I've built hundreds of sites this way. It's not terrible, but if you have a need to change systems or radically alter the shape of your content at some point, or want to use content that doesn't fall into that CMS's logic set, then you may regret the lock-in of the system at some point. The more easily you can adapt the change, the better your end product is going to be. Steve Hickey from the design firm Fresh Tilled Soil recently wrote an article in Smashing Magazine about how his team prototypes content in Jekyll. And I think that's great. The idea of prototyping shouldn't be limited to visual design. We should prototype our content design too. So a text-based system is going to be much faster to iterate on than wrangling forms in the back end of a CMS. I keep a simple output form on hand that allows me to output my Jekyll content in an entirely new format. And then I split the content into documents, making it fairly trivial to restructure the entirety of my site's content. I've got a link there at the bottom with more details on how to do that. And also, knowing a few snippets of regex goes a long way to manipulating content in a text editor. And here it's important, it's very easy to get visual feedback to see if you made any errors when manipulating content. And because every bit of our site, including the content, is in version control, it's quite easy to create an entirely new version of the site, experiment, and throw up a staging copy for review, and either fold that work in or discard it. I often use Surge to throw out a version, tearing it down when I'm done. This is a matter of seconds, not even minutes. So, like I said, I'm also very interested in how we can use Jekyll for real live production sites. Where Jekyll really shines is how it lets us use content however it best suits the content, not the system. If your content fits best in a spreadsheet, then use that. If it fits best in a simple list, then use that. In fact, Jekyll doesn't even limit us to using content that we have within our site. We can also pull in external content. For one project, I've gotten content coming in from the Tumblr API because that's where it made sense for the client to enter it. It's a link blog where he needed to make numerous posts with his phone, which he can do at the push of a button with the Tumblr app. On the same site, we're publishing news and event items, and for those, we're outputting that content on the site, but also in a JSON file that we're using to publish the same data on its sister site, so an entirely different site, using a simple Jekyll plugin contributed by 18F called JekyllGet. That plugin brings the data into our site so we can manipulate it just like any other content on the site, and that keeps the staff from entering those items twice. So there are many instances where a simple list will do, and Jekyll doesn't get in our way. In addition to a document's front matter, you can use YAML in a configuration file or in a data file, depending on who might need to edit it. And aside from JSON, YAML, and CSV, most of the content we work with in Jekyll is a simple text document, often in the form of Markdown, which outputs to HTML, or in HTML itself. Documents should be grouped together as collections if they share similar attributes like fields or layouts or their subject matter. Or if not, they can be left as pages or posts if they are date-based or blog-like. Think again about our users. What's the easiest way for them to understand and get content in? This decision tree, which is available at the link on the bottom, takes you through the decision process. The most important thing is that you have a lot of choices. So this is an important concept. Collections may or may not be output to a URL. That is, even though each item is a document, we don't have to think of them that way or output them to a page. They're merely objects. In fact, thinking back to the Markdown document I displayed at the beginning, the revelation for me was that I had thought of it as the front matter supporting the content below. But free yourself from that idea. The document's YAML-based front matter is what's important. So to review, this is what a front matter looks like in a document. It's all the stuff on top. So as an aside, having said how important front matter is, I'll flip and say we want to avoid having our content creators inputting it where we can by setting defaults. Setting defaults helps us reduce errors and eliminate repetition. We can set default attributes at the collection level or document level. So this is a config file where I've created some collections and added some defaults. And this is how I access that data in my templates. You can see the description set on my defaults to the left and my template to the right. Now that page collection, page.collection, pulls in the pages collection automatically, but the value can be written in too, or it can be brought in as object.collection if you're in a loop. We can also set defaults for each document, for any sort of Jekyll document in our config files. So these are even more simple to output, just calling them like we would any other page or object attribute. And you can see at the bottom how they are output on the site. So as you've seen, we can create several types of key value pairs in our front matter, where the key is the name of the field and the value is what you enter. This simple concept is the basis for quite a bit of logic. We have text fields, which can be a single line or longer, and those fields can be used for anything. I often use Markdown in them as well, so I can have, for instance, italics and titles or short descriptions with links within them without a content creator ever having to do any HTML. We have a field that outputs a date, which can be called date or anything else, but the important thing to note is that date can be reformatted in any number of ways to suit us in our logic or display. So the thing about date fields is they can be formatted in any number of ways. There are simple filters to output the date as a string, or you can format them so as to compare dates. If we use that comparison in a for loop, we can, for example, only show items with dates in the future to display upcoming events. With the new where expression filter, we can loosely, and I say loosely because we can't format the date in advance, we can loosely filter dates and avoid conditionals in our loops, making indexing easier. So that way we can show things like, say just the next 3 events without having to jump through a lot of hoops. And it's much more efficient. So slugs are important in Jekyll. They help us create rich relationships. Because everything is file-based, a slug is going to be unique based on what folder it's in, since file names can't be duplicated. It's not as precise as assigning unique IDs to each item, but it works really well in my experience. So, for instance, a field happens to have a value that matches the slug, or any unique identifier, of course, of another item anywhere on the site. We can create relationships back and forth between these 2 items. In fact, these can be arrays of related items, so we can use the new where expression filter and pull them all in at once. Now, everything in the site is a potential relationship to everything else. And one more thing. I often find in projects the need for multiple potentially repeating objects in an entry. If you look at the documentation for YAML, you'll see it's actually capable of doing a lot more than what we've been using so far. For example, here's a set of additions for our books prototype, where each addition might have its own set of data, and I don't know in advance how many additions there will be. Here are 3 ways to get at that metadata in my template. The third one is super nice, and as I mentioned, a new filter in Jekyll. This allows me to limit the additions to just the one that has a price. So the first one, you can see, will return the first one. The second one would show them whether or not they have a price. And the third one shows me only the additions that have a price. So suddenly, we've gone from a simple text document to an item holding multifaceted data with dates, images, text, and relationships. This really opens up our potential for real-world complex content. So, but yeah, you're probably thinking by now, doesn't that really leave open, the room for errors and that sort of thing? And isn't part of our core strategy reducing errors? Yes. When I first started to talk to clients about the wonders of static site generators a few years ago, I was candid with them. Of the 4 stakeholders in a website, content creators were left out in the cold. I think Markdown and YAML are amazing and should be standard for everybody. We would have much less littered web if they were. But Microsoft Word seems to be where the world outside of the technorati pounds away at creating content. If, for example, in one item, we make a reference and write theater with ER at the end, and then in another make the reference using RE, which is equally valid, we've broken something. So it's not just preferences here. Text is great, but we have to keep things tidy as our sites grow. This is true for a simple blog with a lot of pages, as well as a complex site. And it's true if you're a developer running a site, as well as a non-technical person. And like I said, a lot of users don't care about the purity of text, about which I'm fanatical. They just want something familiar. So first we had Prose.io, which is capable but still daunting for a lot of content creators. And as the ecosystem is growing, we see new players. At some point, Cloud Canon, our sponsor, came along, and I was skeptical at first, but they've really nailed the needs of users. And there are a couple of things that they do in particular to facilitate creation of pretty rich Jekyll-based websites. One, they facilitate the creation of relationships between documents or other content. Cloud Canon's convention over configuration is simple to deal with. If you have a collection called contributors, and in the front matter of a document in another collection a field called contributors, you'll be presented with a drop-down list of the entries in the contributor collection. And two, in the Cloud Canon editor, you can easily edit more complex objects. These fields, along with data fields and things like easy-to-interpret switches for Boolean fields, greatly reduce the opportunity for error and make it life easy for content creators. To be sure, there are a lot of other editors coming about in what looks to be a really healthy ecosystem. Contentful is a headless CMS with a very capable editor that outputs not only to Jekyll, but anywhere you want it to via API. Cloud Canon and Contentful have very different purposes, but Cloud Canon acts as an editing layer of your existing content, which is very important because it doesn't mean that you have to always stay with it. But Contentful is a CMS, one without the infrastructure of a traditional CMS. It's just focused on your content. So you could use both Jekyll content and Contentful content in it, or you could switch back and forth. There's also the incredibly polished SiteLeaf, which is in beta for its version 2, and that will be using Jekyll as its underlying build tool. And Netlify's open source editor is coming along too. So if all this makes you uncomfortable because of outside dependencies, remember the beauty of it is that if one part of your stack isn't working for you, just change it. It really is that simple. And I refer you back to Dave Cole's seminal article, How We Build CMS-Free Websites. So the important thing to remember is that with Jekyll we have a lot of choices. Jekyll doesn't tell us what editor we have to use, and it doesn't dictate what our content should look like or where it should come from. With its growing ecosystem, its avid community and dedicated core contributors, Jekyll is capable of helping build some pretty solid content strategies and rich user experiences. So thank you. And remember, static is the new dynamic. And
awesome, thank you, Bud. That was a really interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it was great to see some of the new Jekyll features in your presentation too. I haven't got my hand on WhereX yet, but yeah,
they're fantastic. They really are.
Yeah. So we have a few questions here. So what do you hope to see from Jekyll in the future?
Well, I think there are a few things. I think that the move towards simplifying Jekyll and focus on faster build times is really important because when you're dealing with clients, particularly, or non-technical people, let's say, it's very important that from the moment that they press save, that they get pretty close to seeing something on the output. And that's a point of confusion for people. So people, in the development community might take build times as an inconvenience to them, but it's super important for non-technical people. So that's great. And I think that we can probably, like that where expression filter that I mentioned, I think that that's fantastic. I would like to be able to filter dates before I use it so I can do some really precise filtering for dates. It seems like I'm always doing date-based content like that. And that's it. I mean, I think the community is amazing. watching the core contributors. I mean, I watch the repo every day, and I really enjoy watching the conversations that go on and how they've, approached improving it, and that alone, is a great reason to use it. So.
And what do you hope to see from? Oh, sorry, I'm hearing this. What do you hope to see from the Jekyll ecosystem over the next couple of years?
Well, so guys like you guys have been making great stride. I mean, I wouldn't have dreamed 3 years ago that we would have had something like Cloud Canon. So that's pretty amazing. And I've been watching. I use GitHub Pages a lot, but I also use Netlify for hosting. I use Aerobatic that works with Bitbucket as well. And I know that Aerobatic has some things in store. And I think I see a lot of people recognizing the importance of this trend and all the tools that we have to use, and people are making really polished tools. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I think that the important thing is that everything about this is about choice. So what works for me for Cloud Canon may not be what works for somebody who might want a more straightforward Markdown editor or something like that. There's lots of ways to do it. The other thing that I think from the ecosystem that's important is that we're bringing in a lot of outside tools to use, Discus comments and like Snipcart for e-commerce and things like that. And so the more that we can integrate different tools for better user experience, the better. And I think that's what's really important. So, because we're letting go of some member-based things and that sort of thing that we might have had in a bigger CMS system.
Yeah, that's something that you really helped me. That really triggered something for me is if you think of Jekyll and the ecosystem as this puzzle piece, and if you're not happy with your Discuss comment system, then you can just swap that piece out.
Yeah.
And it means you can have the best tool for every job.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd never really thought about that before, but I think that's a fantastic insight. My last question here is, you had a demo where you had a bash script which changes the output. I didn't quite see what you were changing it to. Can you just talk a wee bit about that?
Oh, so what I do there is I just output Jekyll content into a template, so as a big list. So I was working on something recently where I had some very complex content, and I was thinking that it wasn't working the way I had initially structured it. So I just output that. So I just created a loop with the content in structured as if they were new documents with front matter and the copy on the bottom and that sort of thing. And then I used the bash script to just break that one page down into multiple documents again, so it was a new collection. And I also run down through a little markdown and stuff. So, and again, I mean, the idea with that is, between that and doing a little bit of, regular expressions in a text editor, I can change everything on my site in a matter of minutes, and it's pretty amazing.
Awesome. That's all we've got time for now, but thank you so much for speaking today, Bud.
Yeah, thanks for having me.